Welcome to your weekly program, BelAhdan, the show that brings Arab American to your living room. I know last week we lost a great giant, Nelson Mandela. The whole world was really mourning this great fighter, politician, man, husband, and a first black president for South Africa. And it's interesting to see how the Western media and how the West try to kind of project Nelson Mandela as a white man. And when you see somebody can kind of compare him to Lincoln or Jefferson, and somebody like Santorum comparing himself to Nelson Mandela, and his fighting Obamacare is like fighting apartheid. That tell you how the mentality of some of the conservative in this country. Nelson Mandela was a very complicated man. His life went so many phases. He was more than just a jailer for 27 years and the one who saved the whites in South Africa. We have here a professor from Carleton. He really, on a personal and a professional level, was involved with some activities with Nelson Mandela. We have Professor Chérif Keïta, and he has actually made some film that talks and address the history of the founder of the African National Congress. Welcome to BelAhdan.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, it's really fascinating. I saw your film, Remembering in Nokatela, and it's really interesting that you go and you uncover something nobody else talking about it. And I'm sure in that trip, in that journey, 3-4 years you've been doing this movie, you find it's more finding about yourself also.
That's true.
About your history, about your past.
That is
Tell
true.
us a little bit, I mean, everybody present Nelson Mandela in his own image. Tell us about Nelson Mandela that you know.
Yes, well, you know, it's, you mentioned the film that I just completed in 2013, just a few months ago, which took 4 years to complete. My involvement with the history of South Africa goes back literally 14 years ago. After I took a trip to South Africa, it was an interim J terms of study with the St. Olaf students and Carleton students for 1 month to study issues of identity, performance, poetry, and the politics of identity in South Africa. So this tour, 1 month long tour, was really meant to give us a chance to hear stories of the struggles against apartheid, the triumph, and also how after this victory, in the context of a democratic South Africa, the different communities that had come together, the different ethnic communities that had been separated by apartheid. The whole notion of apartheid is to keep people apart. But these communities coming together, you know, to fight this system. And now, within the context of a democracy, so how these communities were redefining their own identity within that context. So it really gave us a chance, I mean, to educate ourselves and to just, you know, open, widen our horizons.
Nelson Mandela was the face of the African National Congress.
That's right.
His struggle and
right.
his radical, you know, phase, and you know, this man, you know, is a complicated figure. And the way they presented here is just a very kind of almost saint, and the one who came, no grudges after 27 years of jail, and didn't, you know, it seems like the West will just always remember the color people when they die. You know, they don't remember him when he actually in struggle and fighting. So he wasn't even the founder of African National Congress.
He was not. In fact, this was the biggest discovery for me. Before going to South Africa, I mean, I knew Mandela. I mean, you know, just like everybody, his face had been on television. I knew about the violence that was going on. You know, shortly after he was released, there was a factional violence between Inkatha, a Freedom Party, and the ANC. Bloody violence, okay? So I knew all these things, but, you know, Mandela was my hero, and to many people he was the quintessential African hero. But to go to South Africa to discover that there were other heroes before him. You see, that there were people who had walked this walk way before him, just blew my mind. So, and one of those people turned out to be John Langalibalele Dube, a Zulu man, Zulu intellectual, who had had deep ties to the US, going back to the end of the 19th century, because that's when he was taken by this young man, as a 16-year-old boy, was taken by a couple of a missionary family.
Who was a slave?
No, he was not. He was not, because he came from a chiefly family, and they were among the first Christians
to
be Christianized in that area of KwaZulu-Natal. They belonged to the American Zulu Mission, so which was the missionary organization. So this young boy grew up in that mission, and at some point was taken by this missionary couple to America, to the U.S., for education, because they realized that he came from a family of leadership, and they saw in him that this boy could go very far. It could be a thorn in the side of the colonial system if we get him, if we help him get educated.
Well, the blacks here wouldn't even go to the school or education.
Well, that's right. See what I mean? So this young boy in 1887 was brought by this family, this white family, with ties to Minnesota, to Northfield.
Wow.
You see, so but anyway.
That's where you live now.
Well, this is where I live. But these are not things I knew. I suspected before I went to South Africa. All this was discovered, you know, as the research went on. But again, coming back to Nelson Mandela, you know, really discovering that when I went to a place, the school, where Nelson Mandela voted for the first time, it was John Dube's school, because he chose to go there to show that this is where everything started. And in fact, right before voting, he went to John Dube's grave and stood in front of it. It was a poorly kept grave.
Yeah, I was in the movie.
That's right. He stood in front of it. He said, "Mr. President, I've come to report to you that South Africa is today free."
So he was aware of...
he was aware of John Dube. Yeah. I mean, but now, this is what I'm coming with the story.
You're building up for something.
That's right. So then, you know, when I saw that, I mean, discovered John Dube, somebody that I did not know about as an African intellectual.
Yeah.
I said, well, I really need to do research about him, because this guy, not only did he found the ANC, not only did Mandela come to pay this tribute to him, I mean, he's somebody who studied in the United States. So in my mind, the ANC, through the propaganda of the West, was always this communist organization. Everybody has to stay away from it, you know. But to realize that this organization was founded by somebody who studied in the United States.
And it was founded as a charity organization?
No, it was not. It was not as a political organization.
Okay.
In fact, it's the first political party in South Africa. In fact, people don't know that the ANC preceded even white parties.
Wow.
That's right. The first political party.
Everything preceded the whites.
I mean, you see what I mean? So in 1912, and when they founded it, John Dube and his cousin, Pixley Seme, who was a lawyer, somebody whose name has not been mentioned much, but who also studied in the U.S.
Oh my goodness.
That John Dube helped as a young boy to come and study in a town called Northfield, Massachusetts. So think now, Northfield, Minnesota, Northfield, Massachusetts.
They want to go north, those guys.
Well, that's right. So anyway, so this young man, Pixley Seme, became a lawyer, and the two of them were the moving spirits behind the ANC. So when they founded it in 1912, it was an organization meant to bring together, you know, all the blacks, but also of different walks of life. There were chiefs, there were, you know...
Indian?
The Indians also had their organization separately, but later at some point they come together.
I see.
You see what I mean? But in 1912, this was really an attempt by the blacks to save their own skin, because remember, the Federation of the whites and the white Afrikaners and the British, after they fought each other, was, you know, in 1909, when they came together to form the Union of South Africa. This was at the expense of the blacks.
Oh, sure.
You see, so the blacks realized that, well, the whites have come together to form a union. Then if we don't do the same thing, if we keep being separate and keep fighting each other, then we are going to be the big losers. So that's where the ANC was founded, you know. So to bring, you know, people who were apart from each other, you know, different ethnic groups, different social classes, to bring them together to fight for their rights.
Also, you know, that organization, as you said, it was open to non-Africans,
That's
open
right.
to Muslims,
Yes,
to Indians.
yes.
So they were showing the whites are more inclusive than the actual mainstream or the apartheid one.
Well, exactly. I mean, you know, what was from the very beginning, I think John Dube and Pixley and the early leaders of the ANC, you know, their concern was to bring as many people as possible behind their coalition. So, because they knew that their actions, they needed white people, white benefactors. They needed Indian benefactors.
Yeah.
You know, and in fact, John Dube and Gandhi lived next to each other. A lot of people don't know that. That where the ANC was founded, the founding spirits of the ANC
And he was a lawyer there.
lived right next to lived right next to Mahatma Gandhi, whose family is still in the same area in South Africa today.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
He was not kicked out with
no,
them?
well, Gandhi left to go to India for a while, but he always left part of his family in Inanda.
So, and there is a a connection between Mandela and Gandhi.
No,
I mean,
not really.
The belief.
Yeah, the belief, that's what the belief. The belief in non-violence, because I think, as I told you at the beginning, there was no violence, you know, on their mind.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be loyal British citizens, because remember, this was still a colony of Great Britain.
Yeah, I see.
So they wanted to show, well, we are loyal citizens, you know, and subject of the crown. So any expression of our dissatisfaction has to follow the law, the rule of the law. So they would send delegations to London to go talk to the crown, because they felt that they could get some redress, some way with the authorities about their demands by using the legal means. So they did that from 1912.
Didn't work out?
From 1912 all the way to 1960.
Yeah.
That's when they had the Sharpeville massacre, particularly when the Afrikaners took power, the nationalist party took power in 1948. So that's when they, you know, implemented the policy of total segregation, and in the most brutal way. So from that time on to 1960, they gave a chance to peace and to legal means. But when they realized that, I mean, in the face of this violence, that we have to also be violent. That's when they kind of jettisoned the principle of non-violence to begin to use violence. And that's when Mandela and his age generation became the leaders, because they were formed as the Youth League. So when they realized that the old guard was not going to get any way, you know, any substance.